the birth of the flame. Although our fallen minds forget to climb, although our human stuff resists or breaks, she keeps her will that hopes to divinize the clay. Failure cannot repress, defeat o'erthrow. Time cannot weary her, nor the void subdue. The ages have not made her passionless. No victory she admits of death or fate. Always she drives the souls to new attempt. Always her magical infinitude forces to aspire the inert brute elements. As one who has all infinity to waste, she scatters the seed of the eternal strength on a half-animate and crumbling mold, plants heaven's delight in the heart's passionate mire, pours Godhead's seekings into a bare beast frame, hides immortality in a mask of death. But when the hour of the divine draws near, the mighty mother shall take birth in time, and God be born into the human clay, in forms made ready by your human lives. Then shall the truth supreme be given to men. King Ashwapati, towards the end of his quest upward as traveller of the worlds, as one who has lost the kingdom of his soul, we look back to some God phase of our birth, other than this imperfect creature here, and hope in this or a diviner world to recover yet from heaven's patient guard what by our mind's forgetfulness we miss, our being's natural felicity, our heart's delight we have exchanged for grief, the body's thrill we bartered for mere pain, the bliss for which our mortal nature yearns, as yearns an obscure moth to blazing light. Our life is a march to a victory never won. This wave of being longing for delight, this eager turmoil of unsatisfied strengths, these long far files of forward striving hopes, lift your worshipping eyes to the blue void called heaven, looking for the golden hand that never came, the advent for which all creation waits, the beautiful visage of eternity that shall appear upon the roads of time. Yet still to ourselves we say, rekindling faith, oh, surely one day he shall come to our cry. One day he shall create our life anew and utter the magic formula of peace and bring perfection to the scheme of things. One day he shall descend to life and earth, leaving the secrecy of the eternal doors into a world that cries to him for help, and bring the truth that sets the spirit free. The joy that is the baptism of the soul the strength that is the outstretched arm of love. One day he shall lift his beauty's dreadful veil, impose delight on the world's beating heart, and bear his secret body of light and bliss. Ashwapati's last cry to the Supreme Mother and her response. Heavy, unchanged, weighs still the imperfect world. The splendid youth of time has passed and failed. Heavy and long are the years our labor counts, and all the seals are firm upon man's soul, and weary is the ancient mother's heart. O truth, defended in thy secret Son, voice of her mighty musings in shut heavens, on things withdrawn within her luminous depths. O wisdom's splendor, Mother of the universe, Creatrix, the eternal's artist bride, linger not long with thy transmuting hand, pressed vainly on one golden bar of time, as if time dare not open its heart to God. O radiant fountain of the world's delight, world free and unattainable above, O bliss, who ever dwellest deep hid within, while men seek thee outside and never find, mystery and muse with heretic tongue, incarnate the white passion of thy force, mission to earth some living form of thee, one moment fill with thy eternity, let thy infinity in one body live, all knowledge wrap one mind in seas of light, all love throb single in one human heart. Immortal, treading the earth with mortal feet, all heaven's beauty crowd in earthly limbs, omnipotence girdle with the power of God, movements and moments of immortal will, back with the eternal might one human hour, and with one gesture change all future time. Let a great word be spoken from the heights, and one great act unlock the doors of fate. His prayer sank down in the resisting night, oppressed by the thousand forces that deny, as if too weak to climb to the Supreme. But there arose a wide, consenting voice. The spirit of beauty was revealed in sound, light floated round the marvelous vision's brow, and on her lips the mortal's joy took shape. O strong forerunner, I have heard thy cry. One shall descend and break the iron law, change nature's doom by the lone spirit's power. A seed shall be sown in death's tremendous hour, a branch of heaven transplant to human soil. Nature shall overleap her mortal step, fate shall be changed by an unchanging will. the fulfillment. Then, after silence, a still blissful cry began, such as arose from the infinite. Descend to life, with him thy heart desires, O Satyavan, O luminous Savitri. I sent you forth of old beneath the stars, a dual power of God in an ignorant world, in a hedged creation shut from limitless self, bringing down God to the insentient globe, lifting earth beings to immortality. In the world of my knowledge and my ignorance, where God is unseen and only is heard a name, and knowledge is trapped in the boundaries of mind, and life is hauled in the dragnet of desire, and matter hides the soul from its own sight. You are my force at work to uplift earth's fate, myself that moves up the immense incline between the extremes of the spirit's night and day. He is my soul that climbs from nescient night through life and mind and supernatures vast to the supernal light of timelessness and my eternity hid in the moving time, and my boundlessness cut by the curve of space. It climbs to the greatness it has left behind, and to the beauty and joy from which it fell, to the closeness and sweetness of all things divine, to light without bounds and life illimitable, taste of the depths of the ineffable's bliss, touch of the immortal and the infinite. He is my soul that gropes out of the beast to reach humanity's heights of lucent thought and the vicinity of truth sublime. He is the Godhead growing in human lives, and in the body of earth beings' forms. He is the soul of man climbing to God in nature's surge out of earth's ignorance. O Savitri, thou art my spirit's power, the revealing voice of my immortal word, the face of truth upon the roads of time, pointing to the souls of man, the routes to God. You shall be born into man's dubious hours, in forms that hide the soul's divinity, and show through veils of the earth's doubting air my glory, breaking as through clouds a sun, or burning like a rare and inward fire, and with my nameless influence fill men's lives. Return to earth. But Satyavan replied with smiling lips, behold, at noon, leaving this house of clay, I wandered in far-off eternities, yet still a captive in her golden hands. I tread your little hillock called green earth, and in the moments of your transient sun, live glad among the busy works of men. Then all eyes turned their wondering looks where stood a deepening redder gold upon her cheeks. With lowered lids, the noble, lovely child, and one consenting thought moved every breast. What gleaming marvel of the earth or skies stands silently by human Satyavan to mark a brilliance in the dusk of eve? If this is a she of whom the world has heard, wonder no more at any happy change. Each easy miracle of felicity of her transmuting heart, the alchemy is. Then one spoke there who seemed a priest and a sage. O woman soul, what light, what power revealed, working the rapid marvels of this day, opens for us by thee a happier age. Her lashes, fluttering upwards, gathered in to a vision which had scanned immortal things, rejoicing human forms for their delight. They claimed for their deep childlike motherhood the life of all these souls to be her life. Then falling, veiled the light. Lo, she replied, awaken to the meaning of my heart, that to feel love and oneness is to live, and this the magic of our golden change is all the truth I know or seek, O sage. Lost in the halo of her musing brows, night, splendid with the moon, dreaming in heaven, in silver peace, possessed her luminous reign. She brooded through her stillness on a thought, deep guarded by her mystic folds of light, and in her bosom nursed a greater dawn. Words of Sri Aurobindo. The Guru to the disciple. Lift your eyes towards the sun. He is there in that wonderful heart of life and light and splendor. Watch at night the innumerable constellations glittering like so many solemn watchfires of the eternal in the limitless silence, which is no void but throbs with the presence of a single calm and tremendous existence. See there Orion with his sword and belt shining as he shone to the Aryan fathers 10,000 years ago at the beginning of the Aryan era. Sirius in his splendor, Lyra sailing billions of miles away in the ocean of space. Remember that these innumerable worlds, most of them mightier than our own, are whirling with indescribable speed at the beck of that Ancient of Days, whither none but he knoweth, and yet that they are 1,000,000 times more ancient than your Himalaya, more steady than the roots of your hills, and shall so remain until he at his will shakes them off like withered leaves from the eternal tree of the universe. Imagine the endlessness of time, realize the boundlessness of space, and then remember that when these worlds were not, he was the same as now, and when these are not, he shall be still the same. Perceive that beyond Lyra he is, and far away in space, where the stars of the Southern Cross cannot be seen, still he is there. And then come back to the earth and realize who this he is. He is quite near to you. See yonder old man who passes near you, crouching and bent with his stick. Do you realize that it is God who is passing? There a child runs, laughing in the sunlight. Can you hear him in that laughter? Nay, he is nearer still to you. He is in you. He is you. It is yourself that burns yonder millions of miles away in the infinite reaches of space, that walks with confident steps on the tumbling billows of the ethereal sea. It is you who have set the stars in their places and woven the necklace of the suns, not with hands, but by that yoga, that silent, actionless, impersonal will which has set you here today, listening to yourself in me. Look up, O child of the ancient yoga, and be no longer a trembler and a doubter. Fear not, doubt not, grieve not, for in your apparent body is one who can create and destroy worlds with a breath. Words of Sri Aurobindo, Ways of Love. Human affection is obviously unreliable because it is so much based upon selfishness and desire. It is a flame of the ego, sometimes turbid and misty, sometimes more clear and brightly colored, sometimes tamasic, based on instinct and habit, sometimes rajasic and fed by passion or the cry for vital interchange, sometimes more sattvic and trying to be or look to itself disinterested. But fundamentally it depends on a personal need or a return of some kind, inward or outward, and when the need is not satisfied or the return ceases or is not given, it most often diminishes or dies or exists only as a tepid or troubled remnant of habit from the past, or else turns for satisfaction elsewhere. The more intense it is, the more it is apt to be troubled by tumults, clashes, quarrels, egoistic disturbances of all kinds, selfishness, exactions, lapses even to rage and hatred, ruptures. It is not that these affections cannot last. Tamasic, instinctive affections last because of habit in spite of everything dividing the persons, namely certain family affections, rajasic affections can last sometimes in spite of all disturbances and incompatibilities, and furious ruptures because one has a vital need of the other and clings because of that, or because both have that need and are constantly separating to return and returning to separate, or proceeding from quarrel to reconciliation and from reconciliation to quarrel. Sattvic affections last very often from duty to the ideal, or with some other support, though they may lose their keenness or intensity or brightness. But the true reliability is there only with the psychic element in human affections, because strong enough to color or dominate the rest. For that reason, friendship is, or rather can, oftenest be the most durable of the human affections, because there is less interference of the vital, and even though a flame of the ego, it can be a quiet and pure fire, giving always its warmth and light. Nevertheless, reliable friendship is almost always with a very few. To have a horde of loving, unselfishly faithful friends is a phenomenon so rare that it can be safely taken as an illusion. In any case, human affection, whatever its value, has its place, because through it the psychic being gets the spiritual experiences it needs until it is ready to prefer the true to the apparent, the perfect to the imperfect, the divine to the human. As the consciousness has to rise to the higher level, so the activities of the heart also have to rise to the higher level and change their basis and character. Yoga is the founding of all life and consciousness in the divine. So also love and affection must be rooted in the divine, and a spiritual and psychic oneness in the divine must be their foundation. To reach the divine first, leaving other things aside, or to seek the divine alone, is the straight road towards that change. Words of Sri Aurobindo. Psychic and rebirth. It is necessary to understand clearly the difference between the evolving soul, psychic being, and the pure Atman, self or spirit. The pure self is unborn, does not pass through death or birth, independent of birth or body, mind or life, or this manifested nature. It is not bound by these things, not limited, not affected, even though it assumes and supports them. The soul, on the contrary, is something that comes down into birth and passes through death, although it does not itself die, for it is immortal, from one state to another, from the earth plane to other planes, and back again to the earth existence. It goes on with this progression from life to life through an evolution which leads it up to the human state and evolves through it all a being of itself which we call the psychic being that supports the evolution and develops a physical, a vital, a mental, human consciousness as its instruments of world experience and of a disguised, imperfect, but growing self-expression. All this it does from behind a veil, showing something of its divine self only insofar as the imperfection of the instrumental being will allow it. But a time comes when it is able to prepare to come out from behind the veil, to take command and turn all the instrumental nature towards the divine fulfillment. This is the beginning of the true spiritual life. The soul is able now to make itself ready for a higher evolution of manifested consciousness than the mental human. It can pass from the mental to the spiritual, and through degrees of the spiritual to the supramental state. Till then, there is no reason why it should cease from birth. It cannot in fact do so. If, having reached the spiritual state, it wills to pass out of the terrestrial manifestation, it may indeed do so, but there is also possible a higher manifestation in the knowledge and not in the ignorance. It is not the naked spirit, but the psychic being that goes to the psychic plane to rest till it is called again to another life. There is therefore no need of a force to compel it to take birth anew. It is in its nature something that is put forth from the divine to support the evolution, and it must do so till the divine's purpose in its evolution is accomplished. Karma is only a machinery. It is not the fundamental cause of terrestrial existence. It cannot be, for when the soul first entered this existence, it had no karma. The psychic being at the time of death chooses what it will work out in the next birth and determines the character and conditions of the new personality. Life is for the evolutionary growth by experience in the conditions of the ignorance till one is ready for the higher light. The dying wish of the man is only something on the surface. It may be determined by the psychic and so help to shape the future, but it does not determine the psychic's choice. That is something behind the veil. It is not the outer consciousness's action that determines the inner process, but the other way round. Sometimes, however, there are signs or fragments of the inner action that come up on the surface. Namely, some people have a vision or remembrance of the circumstances of their past in a panoramic flash at the time of death. That is the psychic's review of the life before departing. All human incarnations or births have naturally a psychic being, It is only other types, like the vital beings, that have not. And that is precisely the reason why they want to possess men and enjoy physical life without being themselves born here. For so they escape the psychic law of evolution and spiritual progress and change. Words of Sri Aurobindo. Categories of love. I suppose love expresses something more intense than goodwill, which can include mere liking or affection. But whether love or goodwill, the human feeling is always either based on or strongly mixed with ego. That is why it cannot be pure. It is said in the Upanishad, one does not love the wife for the sake of the wife or the child or friend, etc., as the case may be, but for one's self's sake one loves the wife. There is usually a hope of a return of benefit or advantage of some kind, or of certain pleasures and gratifications, mental, vital or physical, that the person loved can give. Remove these things and the love very soon sinks, diminishes or disappears, or turns into anger, reproach, indifference, or even hatred. But there is also an element of habit, something that makes the presence of the person loved a sort of necessity because it has always been there. And this is sometimes so strong that even in spite of entire incompatibility of temper, fierce antagonism, something like hatred, it lasts, and even these gusts of discord are not enough to make the person's part. In other cases, this feeling is more tepid, and after a time one gets accustomed to separation or accepts a substitute. There is again often the element of some kind of spontaneous attraction or affinity, mental, vital or physical, which gives a stronger cohesion to the love. Lastly, there is the highest or deepest kind of love, the psychic element, which comes from the inmost heart and soul, a kind of inner union or self-giving, or at least a seeking for that, a tie or an urge independent of other conditions of or elements existing for its own sake and not for any mental, vital or physical pleasure, satisfaction, interest or habit. But usually the psychic element in human love, even where it is present, is so much mixed, overloaded and hidden under the others that it has little chance of fulfilling itself or achieving its own natural purity and fullness. What is called love is therefore sometimes one thing, sometimes another, and often a confused mixture, and it is impossible to give a general answer to the questions you put as to what is meant by love in such and such a case. It depends on the persons and the circumstances. When the love goes towards the divine, there is still this ordinary human element in it. There is the call for a return, and if the return does not seem to come, the love may sink. There is the self-interest, the demand for the divine as a giver of all that the human being wants, and if the demands are not acceded to, abhimana against the divine, loss of faith, loss of fervor, etc., etc. But the true love for the divine is in its fundamental nature not of this kind, but psychic and spiritual. This psychic element is the need of the inmost being for self-giving, love, adoration, union, which can only be fully satisfied by the divine. This spiritual element is the need of the being for contact, merging, union with its own highest and whole self and source of being and consciousness and bliss, the divine. These two are two sides of the same thing. The mind, vital, physical, can be the supports and recipients of this love, but they can be fully that only when they become remolded in harmony with the psychic and spiritual elements of the being and no longer bring in the lower insistences of the ego. The movement of the psychic being, dropping the outer sheaths on its way to the psychic plane, is the normal movement. But there can be any number of variations. One can return from the vital plane, and there are many cases of an almost immediate birth, sometimes even attended with a complete memory of the events of the past life. Hell and heaven are often imaginary states of the soul, or rather of the vital, which it constructs about it after its passing. What is meant by hell is a painful passage through the vital or lingering there, as for instance, in many cases of suicide, where one remains surrounded by the forces of suffering and turmoil created by this unnatural and violent exit. There are of course also worlds of mind and vital worlds which are penetrated with joyful or dark experiences. One may pass through these as the result of things formed in the nature which create the necessary affinities. But the idea of reward or retribution is a crude and vulgar conception which is a mere popular error. There is no rule or complete forgetfulness in the return of the soul to rebirth. There are, especially in childhood, many impressions of the past life which can be strong and vivid enough, but the materializing education and influence of the environment prevent their true nature from being recognized. There are even a great number of people who have definite recollections of a past life, but these things are discouraged by education and the atmosphere and cannot remain or develop. In most cases, they are stifled out of existence. At the same time, it must be noted that what the psychic being carries away with it and brings back is ordinarily the essence of the experiences it had in former lives, and not the details, so that you cannot expect the same memory as the one has of the present existence. A soul can go straight to the psychic world, but it depends on the state of consciousness at the time of departure. If the psychic is in front at the time, the immediate transition is quite possible. It does not depend on the acquisition of a mental and vital as well as a psychic immortality. Those who have acquired that would rather have the power to move about in the different worlds and even act on the physical world without being bound to it. On the whole, it may be said that there is no rigid rule for these things. Manifold variations are possible depending on the consciousness, its energies, tendencies and formations, although there is a general framework and design into which all fit and take their place. Words of Sri Aurobindo. Earth consciousness. The earth consciousness does not want to change, so it rejects what comes down to it from above. It has always done so. It is only if those who have taken this yoga open themselves and are willing to change their lower nature that this unwillingness can disappear. What stands in the way, of course, is always the vital ego, with its ignorance and the pride of its ignorance, and the physical consciousness with its inertia, which resents and resists any call to change, and its indolence, which does not like to take the trouble. It finds it more comfortable to go on its own way, repeating always the same old movements, and at best expecting everything to be done for it in some way at some time. The first thing is to have the right inner attitude. You have that. The rest is the will to transform oneself and the vigilance to perceive and reject all that belongs to the ego and the tamasic persistence of the lower nature. Finally, to keep always oneself open to the Mother in every part of the being, so that the process of transformation may find no hindrance. There is another cause of the general inability to change which at present afflicts the sadhak. It is because the sadhana, as a general fact, has now and for a long time past come down to the inconscient. The pressure, the call is to change in that part of the nature which depends directly on the inconscient, the fixed habits, the automatic movements, the mechanical repetitions of the nature, the involuntary reactions to life, all that seems to belong to the fixed character of a man.
A vision. The mother says, just see, look at me. I am here, come back in my new body, divine, transformed and glorious. And I am the same mother, still human. Do not worry. Do not be concerned about your own self, your progress and realization, nor about others. I am here. Look at me. Gaze into me. Enter into me wholly. Merge into my being. Lose yourself into my love with your love. You will see all problems solved, everything done. Forget all else. Forget the world. Remember me alone. Be one with me, with my love.